Hi, Carell here. Thank you for tuning into my presentation. We're going to get right to it. We're going to present Frankenstein in order to try to answer the question, is it actually a warning or a homage to modern scientists? Let's start with a little bit of backstory. Mary Shelley's born in 1797 to two parents that are writers. Unfortunately, not long after her death, her mother passed, and she was never actually given a formal education. She taught herself how to read and write. So at age 16, she had decided with her then lover, Percy Shelley, to elope and go to Europe. But they dealt with a few difficulties, notably the fact that their first child passed, and also the fact that they were shunned by a lot of people for Percy Shelley being married at the time. In 1831, they went to their friend Lord Baron's house in Geneva, who gave them the challenge to write a chilling ghost story. And that's when Mary Shelley started writing Frankenstein. So, Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus, tells the tale of Victor Frankenstein, who brings about artificial life. And he's very proud of himself at first. However, he comes to fear his invention and run away from it and leaves his creation on its own to venture and discover the human race by itself. So, from what is understood of the story, it is actually a warning. It's actually trying to teach scientists essential lessons when it comes to tackling scientific pursuits. So, there's lesson number one, a very important one, that is one must always take responsibility for their actions. And the book tries to shine light on the importance of taking responsibility for one's actions and the consequences that come with not doing so. And scientists should always ponder on the effects of their scientific findings on the world, and it should be common practice. That's something the author tries to highlight throughout the story. So, an example from page 59, unable to endure the aspect of the being I had created, I rushed out of the room and continued a long time traversing my bedchamber, unable to compose my mind to sleep. So Victor leaves his creation to his own devices. He is afraid of it, and instead of taking care of it as he should, and instead of providing for it, he just leaves it on his own, being unable to take care of itself. Another example is, I swear to pursue the demon who caused this misery. Until here I shall perish in mortal conflict. For this purpose I will preserve my life to execute my dear revenge. He never actually takes responsibility for what he did and tries to absolve it by killing the monster, almost as if he's forgetting the part he played in the situation being as it was. So, according to Heather E. Douglas, who wrote a book about moral responsibilities of scientists, she says scientists are responsible for both the impact they intend and some of the impacts they do not intend, if they are readily foreseeable in specific detail. So, she talks about specific nucleotides that make it possible to make specific pathogens, such as the Spanish flu. She says, as scientists develop ways to generate sequences of base pairs even more cheaply and efficiently, the opportunity for the malicious or the simply unreflective to play with pathogens to see what kind of traits arise looms larger. So the second lesson that can be taught from the book, that can be learned from the book, is once must never toy with life. So there are obviously two realms, life and death, that are not understood, not well understood. They are the biggest mysteries of life, and they are so fragile that they should not be dealt with lightly. And that's something the book really tries to highlight. The first example being the following: I doubted at first whether I should attempt the creation of a being like myself, or one of simpler organizations, but my imagination was too much exalted by my first success to permit me to doubt of my ability to give life to an animal as complex and as wonderful as man, from page 53. So Victor is obviously developing this God complex. He is way over his head, and he thinks that he can defy nature and corrupt what is meant to be. On page 102, it says, as I sat, a train of reflection occurred to me, which led me to consider the effects of what I was now doing. 3 years before, I was engaged in the same manner and had created a fiend whose unparalleled barbarity had desolated my heart and filled it forever with the bitterest remorse. I was now about to form another being of whose dispositions I was alike ignorant. She might become 10,000 times more malignant than her mate and delight, for its own sake, in murder and wretchedness. That's from page 102. So as Victor is building his invention's mate, he realizes that he cannot do it. He realizes that there was a lot more involved than simply building it. He realized that he was playing with fire and he was messing with what was meant to be. He was toying again with life and death and realized that he had actually gone too far, and was thinking about how he had lost himself and a lot of people through it. So Joachim Bolt and Oliver Mueller state in a scientific article they had written together, the shift from genetics engineering manipulatio to synthetic biology's creatio is a shift with considerable ethical significance. In synthetic biology, the aim is not to amend an organism with a certain quality of altered characteristics, that is, to manipulate. Instead, it is to equip a completely unqualified organism with a new quality of being, that is, to create a new form of life. They criticize the fact that artificial life is unethical. It should be considered unethical. Throughout their article, they try to give various reasons as to why we should be more considerate when it comes to the way we try to make artificial life. For example, putting a camera on a fly. And the last lesson, but not the least important, is, of course, understanding the limits around you, not only your own, but also your society's. So the novel really means to highlight the importance of understanding your society's limits. There are a lot of great inventions out there. However, is society ready for them? Are things that we should always question, such as a two-headed elephant, is that ethically responsible? In page 248, for example, it says, I perceive your thoughts. You do not credit my narrative and do not intend to pursue my enemy with the punishment which is his desert. My rage is unspeakable when I reflect that the murderer whom I have turned loose upon society still exists. You refuse my just demand. I have but one resource, and I devote myself, either in my life or death, to his destruction. So Victor is unable to convince the Genevan magistrate of what he has done, because it is so unconceivable and is something his society is not ready for, to the point that he can't even get justice that he believes is due to him, that he believes is owed to him. Another example from page 161, who can describe their horror and consternation on beholding me? Agatha fainted, and Safie, unable to attend to her friend, rushed out of the cottage. Felix darted forward and with supernatural force tore me from his father, to whose knees I clung, in a transport of fury. He dashed me to the ground and struck me violently with a stick. So here we see that the creature is really rejected from the family that he had been learning from all this time. He had been replicating their behaviors, their way of acting, and he simply wanted affection. But we can see here that that is something the society is not ready to give him. So ethical limits in science are questions that should be pondered on. And Stephen Rose, a professor of biology, states, on the one hand, some claims have been made that certain types of knowledge are too dangerous for humanity in its present state, and therefore some types of experiments should not be made. For instance, nuclear power or gene cloning are considered to present hazards which make it inappropriate to pursue them experimentally. We see that all the characters in this tale really deal with their own inner turmoil. And Mary Shelley really finds an effective way of telling this tale so that scientists around her can really learn how it is that they should deal with ethics in the future and try to learn these essential lessons out of it. It's really a warning for readers and scientists all over, with these 3 essential lessons taught throughout the book. Thank you for tuning into my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice day.